they're not thinking about tomorrow down in Washington. They're thinking about tonight. The Nationals square up against the Astros. Will they make it 3 in a row? Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, it's Friday. That's why Geraldo Rivera.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Emily. Delighted to see you.
Happy Friday. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
By the way, just for those Texas viewers, the Houston Astros have the ability to bounce back big time. It's happened before.
Sure.
You're so diplomatic. Right. Because Texas is our bedrock. Listen, it's a historic game for Washington. Meanwhile, let's talk about this. Geraldo, we got a Fox News alert because John Durham, the U.S. attorney, has now apparently expanded the Russia investigation. Now it is a criminal investigation. What does that all mean?
Well, it means that the U.S. attorney in Connecticut, they appointed as a special prosecutor in this case, has now elevated the probe into how the investigation of President Trump started to a criminal inquiry, which means there is a reasonable belief or reason to believe that a crime or crimes were committed. So you were talking about in Washington, they're thinking about tonight and playing the Houston Astros. They're really thinking about the night sweats, the epidemic of night sweats they had yesterday, because they now are thinking, you know, with impunity, we use the awesome power of the federal government to pursue in a reckless, relentless way the president of the United States. And now guess what?
For political purposes.
Well, we'll discern their motives. Some are obvious. But when it becomes clear that these were people who had the audacity to accuse the President of the United States of essentially being a traitor, of essentially being a spy for the Russians, a president who put the interests of our principal foreign adversary above those of the country he was sworn by the Constitution to protect.
All right, let me just bring this in. Some CIA officials have retained, according to the New York Times, criminal lawyers in anticipation of being interviewed. It was not clear whether Durham was scrutinizing other former top intel officials. But could it be the fact that they start with the IG report? Could the report show the officers, low-level officers in the CIA, are going to need lawyers? That is the indication, and they're going to work their way up.
Well, we don't know how far up the food chain the decisions were made.
But do you start low?
But wait, you start with Michael Horowitz's, the Inspector General's report. So here's the FISA warrant that allows the wiretapping of key Trump aides. So now you're wiretapping. So now you really are spying. Trump in what people thought was a paranoid rant, talking about wiretapping in the Trump Tower. Guess what? There's wiretapping in Trump Tower. I have no doubt they tried their best to delegitimize Donald Trump as a tool of Vladimir Putin. They tried in a way that was. So if you read the newspapers, if you followed the story as it unfolded, in a way that was obscene, in a way that was reckless, in a way that they had used everything with seeming impunity, that nobody would ever touch them, that the president was a bad guy, they were going to get him. If they didn't get him that way, they were going to get him because they were going to make him crazy, and then the 25th Amendment would be invoked. Rod Rosenstein would use the 25th Amendment. They were wearing microphones to wiretap the president of the United States. And guess what? It all came out zero.
Well, Geraldo, let me ask you about this. So John Durham was appointed, as you know, by then AG Eric Holder to investigate alleged CIA abuses. He's been lauded by both sides of the aisle for how incredible he is. And now Democrats are saying, however, that he's simply pursuing a political agenda, political bias. What say you?
That is so accurate. I mean,
we were
can you see? I don't know if you could see. So here's first of all, it's a big story, but it's a tiny headline. But it is on the front page of the New York Times. They broke the story. Barr refocuses Russian inquiry on own agency. In other words, we are now investigating the investigators. But almost immediately, if you just read down, the New York Times deminimizes its own story by saying, fear that Trump is using Justice Department to chase perceived enemies. So immediately they undercut the motive for the investigation. They're not caring about the fact that the power of the intelligence agencies were used to undermine the president of the United States. They care that they're going to get caught for the exaggerations and the lies. Remember, the Mueller report found zero U.S. participation in any alleged Russia collusion. No Americans were involved.
Right. We had John Radcliffe, the congressman from Texas, with us just about a half an hour ago, and he made the point the Department of Justice was used by the administration, but it was the administration during Barack Obama.
Well, and here is the fascinating prospect or possibility, however remote. If you're going up the food chain, and now the food chain consumes James Clapper, the head of the national security agencies, and John Brennan, the head of the CIA. What's above that? How far up do you get? Yeah. You go through the Attorney General, then where are you? You're in the White House of the 44th president. Did Barack Obama know that the intelligence agencies were seeking to delegitimize his successor? At what point did he know? At what point? At what did he authorize? What did? What role did he play?
Clapper or Brennan just do it on their own?
Susan Rice. I mean, these are all personalities that, when you say that these low-level CIA and FBI people are retaining criminal defense attorneys, I predict in the next week or two you're going to see a run on criminal defense attorneys in Washington, D.C. by people further up the food chain in the previous administration. How high? We'll follow the evidence, but now it's clear. They were pushing this rock up the hill. This was the rock that was going to get Trump, thrown out of office. Then so what? Then they found, we don't have the evidence. What? Now the rock's coming back on them. And if that vivid metaphor works.
But maybe the desperate right uppercut is come to win, even though you're groggy, is the impeachment push. That could be the last gasp of an old intelligence apparatus trying to get a president that's been relentlessly.
And is that either consciously or subconsciously the reason they are conducting the impeachment inquiry in secret?
Right.
How can they, seeking to, again, delegitimize the president they have been trying to get out of office from the second he took the oath of office? Is this their secret plan to do as much as they can out of plain sight, deprive the president of not? They say we're talking about process. We are talking about process. We're talking about due process. The president has all the constitutional rights, and I think the impeachment will fail just as easily.
And Geraldo, speaking of process, it was Nancy Pelosi who changed the rules when it came to transcribed depositions, which is why we wound up with this so-called Star Chamber, as a number of Republicans
or kangaroo court. And I really do believe that what the Republicans did the other day in storming the secret chamber.
You mean where they walked in?
When they
storming.
Were I the president of the United States, I would fight everything. I would cooperate with nothing unless and until they open this up to a vote, just as there was a vote in 1998, just as there was a vote in 1974 with Nixon, 98 with Clinton. There has to be a vote if they want to go after the president with this most profound weapon in the Constitution. Then, by God, we have to know who is for this and who's against it.
Right. Let's move on.
We want to show you. Actually, we know someone who's definitely for it. That would be Joe Biden, and also suggesting that Trump's children working in the White House is improper. Take a look.
Do you believe President Trump's children have acted properly and avoided conflicts of interest?
Their actions speak for themselves. I can just tell you this, that if I'm president, get elected president, my children are not going to have offices in the White House. My children are not going to sit in on cabinet meetings.
What's improper about that?
But it's just simply improper because you should make it clear to the American public that everything you're doing is for them. Go to the extent that he has gone to have our, his children, his son-in-law, et cetera, engaged in the day-to-day operation of things they know nothing about.
It's people you can trust, you could say. Brad Parscale came back, who's running the re-election campaign for President Trump. Joe Biden is correct on one point. Hunter Biden would never have an office in the White House because he's proven that his only qualification is being the son of Joe Biden. And now there's talk that Hunter Biden had this international tie, according to NBC, to Romania. He's representing some executives over there, where his dad also had some interest in Romania and gutting some of the corruption there.
And that probe is just beginning also. I feel sorry for Hunter Biden. You know, he's a young man, 49 years old, who has been in and out of rehab, thrown out of the Navy because he tested positive for cocaine. He grabbed onto these, glommed onto his dad's coattails and got these jobs. And I think that, you know, I feel sorry for the Biden.
Because
Don't
he
feel
never
too
would be
sorry
in
for
the
him.
news were his dad not running for president.
Well, unless they were investigating corruption in Romania, Ukraine, or in China.
They haven't so
but
far.
But I have to say, I visited with Jared Kushner and with Ivanka Trump in the White House. I've seen them in action at a time when they were surrounded by a nest of vipers and backstabbers and snitches because of this.
I think those are names of old books that have been released, by the way.
Right. But to see her, Ivanka, working, she's given up her CEO position and her firm, working for no pay, really a trusted, loyal, aide to her dad, and one of the few people he really could trust during that tumultuous period. And Jared Kushner, the grandson of Holocaust survivors, negotiating the move of the U.S. Embassy, a move that I oppose, but I understand why people are for it, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He really did that. He's also done great work in criminal justice reform. He's really a mensch. The guy's really has done a good job for his father-in-law, and both of them working for no pay, as the president is working for no pay. To compare these two high-functioning, real executives with deep experience with Hunter, the troubled young man who landed the position because his dad was being loving and helpful,
That's not what he said.
I believe, is apples and oranges. It's the fact that they are children is where the comparison
You know what hits
stops.
me? When 60 Minutes usually has explosive sound bites to sell an interview, if that's their explosive soundbite, it looks like, you're going to sleep through it.
Yeah.
Not that exciting.
But I think that they are terrific, Ivanka and Jared.
Right. And by the way, talk about terrific. Carly, have you met Carly Shimkin?
I've noticed since the I mistake.
That's very sweet. Yes,
Let's
we
see
do.